Hi everyone, welcome back for another video review. Today we are going to cover the AJH Synth Ring SM. This is a 1414 HP's module, and it's a multifunctional module. Ring modulation, sub wave generation, mixer, wave doubler. It can do quite a few things. And indeed, to well show what it can do and give you an idea of how well or bad it can do things, I will keep things simple. I will describe the individual sections and functions of the module, and then we quickly, in a few minutes, we're going to go plug things in so we can see and hear how this module can process signals. Of course, it's going to be only a few examples, only a glimpse of the sonic power of this module, because it's also source dependent. So, I mean, there is so many things, so many type of sounds you can create that you cannot just cover all of them in one review video. And to keep things simple, I will actually cover the user interface briefly, twice. The first time I will cover it will be without anything plugged in, because especially for people that are very new to Modular Eurorack and new to multifunctional module, it may help to see and understand the two types of mixers, which input relates to which knob, but not getting distracted by colorful cables and sounds coming out of everywhere. The second time I will cover the user interface will be with signals, audio, CV plugged in, so we can see and hear the controls in action. I think this may be helpful, so I'm doing that. That's because I had this friend of mine coming over for other reasons, and he saw this module. He's very new to Modular, and when I was showing him what this module could do while using it, it was getting a little bit confused because he wasn't sure what he was exactly hearing, but he is very new to Modular. Then when I explained it to him without anything plugged in, it just things clicked. He thought, oh yeah, of course, that's quite easy. So let's try this way. So okay, let's get started. So we have 5 inputs at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see these knobs labeled 1 for input 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can plug in 5 signals. They get mixed, and you can change the mixing level of any of these 5 separate inputs, and they come from the output, which has a dedicated output level. The plus sign next to input 5 label reminds you that input channel 5 is a hot mixer channel, and it will distort more easily than input 1 to 4. Now let's look at the ring modulator section. It has 3 inputs, X, Y, Z. X is your carrier signal. Y and Z are 2 modulator signals that go into the ring modulator. The Z gives you a more resonant modulator, and you can use it for audio rate, LFO modulation. Each of these input has a dedicated signal level control knob, so you can decide how much or a little of any of these 3 signals go into the ring modulator. The outcome of the ring modulation, or the output signal of your ring modulator, its level is controlled with this knob. So here with RM level, ring modulator level, you control how much of the ring modulated level goes through the mixer into the output. But that's not all. And this is where a friend of mine was getting confused. Okay, this is a 5-channel mixer. Now, when you don't use these inputs, and you are using these other ones, X, Y, Z with these channels, you still have another 5-channel mixer, which is channel 1 is the ring modulator output level that goes to the output. Then you have X mix and Y mix. This allows you to mix the original carrier signal and the original signal you send to modulation input 1. So you can mix these untreated signals back into the output. So you can mix, for example, with the X, the original signal, together with the ring modulator signal, plus a little bit of the, or as much as you want, of the Y modulation input. So this is 1, 2, 3 channels, plus sub 1, sub 2. These sub-bus waves are generated based on the signal present at the X. So again, you can mix ring modulator signal, original X signal, original Y signal, and 2 sub-waves generated off the X signal, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, into the output. So you have a 5-channel mixer twice, a simple 5-channel mixer with 5 knobs, and 1 channel is hotter with the output. Or you have a 5-channel mixer where channel 1 is the ring modulator output, channel 2 is the carrier signal, channel 3 is the modulator Y signal, channel 4 is sub 1, channel 5 is sub 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the output. And then we have the frequency double switch. What this does, it connects together the carrier and modulator inputs so that you only need 1 input present at the X input to generate a 1 octave higher signal. Okay, let's have a look at the bottom section of the Ring SM, and that is the 5 inputs DC coupled mixer, which is based on the discrete transistor CP3 design from the 70s. But anyway, we have 5 inputs, and one of them, input 5, has a plus next to the name to tell you that it's a hotter input. It will distort more easily than the other 4 inputs. The input level, it's plus minus 5 volts. So from minus 5 to plus 5, there is 10 volts peak to peak. But it will deal with signals up to plus minus 10 volts. So you can use those hotter signals in here. But they will, of course, start to distort and clip. The mixer is DC coupled, so it can be used to mix control voltage in addition to audio signals. Now, what I have here, very simply, I'm sending a few waves from the mini-mod VCOs into this mixer. So for each input, we have the corresponding numbered mixer level control, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And here I'm simply sending some waves from these mini-mod VCOs into the inputs so we can see and hear how the mixer works. The output, which is this one, right? Output with the output knob. I am sending it to the Sonic XV filter just so that we can shave off some of the high frequencies. It's just so that it doesn't sound too high-pitched in the video. Right, okay, so input 1 is the shark tooth from the mini-mod VCO. Input 2 is the sawtooth. Then we have the square. Going into the filter, of course. Yeah, you know, if you open the filter, right. Then we have this is the sawtooth from the second VCO. Okay. Now, input 5 is coming from the third VCO. In this case, VCO 3. It's a different patch going to his own VCA, and it's playing a different melody. Slightly different. Okay. So if we get them up, we can mix them. So you can use the mixer to create waves you send in, and then you can mix different song parts from different VCOs, different patches. So they all get mixed and sent to the one output here. Now, the channel 5, as we said before, is hotter, it distorts more easily. So let's distort it a little bit. That's lovely. Okay, let's have a better look at the difference in distortion and clipping between channel 5 and another channel. What I have here is the sawtooth from oscillator 2 going into input 5 and multed into input 2. Okay. The output, one copy, I'm sending it to the oscilloscope so we can see the output signal, and the rest goes to the filter as before, and then to the VCA and to the computer. All right, so well, let's hear input 2 first. Okay, that's the maximum hotness we can get from any of these 4 inputs. But now that we switch to input 5, I think we can reach the same level as 75% roughly of input 5. But if we push input 5 further, then we can see a much harsher, a much more intense clipping. So the wave will become flat at the top. And this is the actual clipping. So this is the actual clipping of the signal introduced on the path of channel 5 when you have both output level and channel 5 at maximum. Okay, so indeed now if we get 2 up, you see the clipping, if I take number 5 off, there is no that nice hot clipping. One more thing to remember is that if you are using this as a mixer and you're not using all the channels, remember to totally switch off, rotate to 0 the level control for those inputs that do not have a signal applied. One reason is because, for example, the sub waveform would still output some sort of wave, even if there is nothing plugged into X input 1. I will talk about the sub later. And of course, it doesn't have to be just about sawtooths and lead sounds or bass sounds or whatever. Here I have a snare and a hi-hat, closed hat and a kick drum, just as a simple example. We're going to distort the kick drum. So this is the snare. Hats. The kick is on channel 5 because it's the hotter one, so we can distort it easier. Quite clean. And now I push it. Now remember, this is a 5-input DC-coupled discrete transistor CP3 based mixer, so we have a nice quality of distortion that you definitely will want to use for creative output. And indeed, this is a DC-coupled. Well, let's clarify this. The X, Y, Z input for the ring modulator are AC coupled, so fixed voltages, DC voltages, not going to do anything here. But the 5-input mixer is DC coupled, so we can use DC voltage to offset the final output. Why is this important? Well, if we had a positive offset, positive voltage, we're going to push the wave up, so we can create an asymmetric distortion where the waveform only distorts at the top. And if we add a negative voltage, we can create an asymmetric distortion where the waveform only distorts at the bottom. And of course, it sounds different. So let's have a look. We have a simple triangle wave from one oscillator going into input 1. And now we can see the blue wave is the triangle wave from the VCO, and the green wave is the, get a hand of it, is the output. Now, if you have the output level to maximum, around 8, 9, you have a unity gain, and then if you go a little bit further, you start to have some clipping anyway. So let's say this is our sound. Basic sound, I mean. Let's play around with the DC offset to have some fun with the distortion. You can use this as a distortion module for fun. It's really nice. So let's add some DC offset. What I have here, I'm going to use the CV Mix Offset VCA module from AJH Synth. The output is going to input 2 on the Ring SM. So I'm going to open, and at the moment there is no offset going because the offset is set to 0, so I'm not adding any DC voltage. Now see what happens when I add positive offset. See and hear. So we have added up to +5 volt. So the original waveform, and before the output was roughly, it was the same as the blue wave, but now we've shifted the whole thing up and we're clipping the top. Now let's go back to 0 and then we go -5. Switch quickly so you can hear that it actually sounds different if we clip at the bottom or the top with the same. Well, I'm going to go from -5 to +5. And back to 0. But remember, okay, let's close channel 2. It's all about having fun, right? So what I'm going to do now, on input 3, I'm going to send an LFO purely to create a variable offset. I know we're talking about DC voltage. This is, of course, an LFO is AC voltage, but hey, it's all about having fun. So I'm going to send an LFO to change over time from positive to negative distortion. So I'm going to create a variable asymmetric distortion. Oh, I forgot to send it. There you go. let's not forget that this mini mod dual LFO VCA has also a sync input, so I can sync this LFO with the VCO. Okay, next, why not use both together, the DC offset and an LFO, to play around with distortion? Let me open the channel 2 so I can send DC voltage as well. Here we have a drum bit with the kick drum from the Mutant bass drum going straight into the audio input 2 of the VCA, so that's on its own. The Mutant snare and the Analog Solutions hats, they go into input 1 of the Ring SM. So let's add some offset. And you could play a little bit with the LFO as well. Okay, let's have a look at the Ring SM ring modulator section. This is, of course, a fully analog module and is of a vintage design based on a discrete transistor core. This ring modulator has actually a quite warm sounding 4-quadrant multiplier. So I'm going to plug the output of the RSSM here, and so that we can use the filter in case we want to lower some of the high frequency and so on. And the output will go to channel 1 of the oscilloscope, and that's the green signal. Now, at the beginning of the video, somewhere around there, I mentioned that this is like having 2 mixers. But you've already seen the first mixer, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into 1 output. By second mixer, what I mean is it's a normalized setup that uses those 5 channels if you don't plug anything into these inputs. If nothing is plugged here for those channels that are empty, then it's the names like ring modulation level. Let's say the output of the ring modulator going to the final output. X mix, which is this X input, Y mix, which is the Y input here, and then there is a sub 1 and sub 2. So if nothing plugged into input 4, there is this sub wave generator that is present on channel 4. Nothing plugged into channel 5, there is a sub 2 present on input 5. Nothing plugged on channel 1, there is the ring modulator output on channel 1. Nothing plugged input 2 or 3, there is then the carrier or modulator 1, which is X and Y, present on this channel. And we will soon see. So, okay, so let's send this triangle wave from the first oscillator into the X input. The X input is the carrier input of the ring SM, and a copy of this triangle wave, we send it to the oscilloscope. Now, there is another particular feature here of the ring SM that is not common on other ring modulators. Normally, a ring modulator has 2 inputs and 1 output. The first input is the carrier signal input. The second input is the modulator signal input. The ring SM has a carrier input, and then it gives you 2 separate modulators input, the Y modulator input and the Z modulator input. We will look at them as we plug them in. And you can use them together, one at a time. It's totally up to you. So you have more shaping potential here than a normal ring modulator. Okay, so we send it a triangle, and it's going there. Now, we were talking about the mixer, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, the X mix allows you to send the carrier signal to the output before goes into the ring modulator. So if I increase this, I'm trying not to be in front of the camera. If I increase this, you can hear the triangle. I don't have a full attack. I got a little bit of a delayed attack. So what we're hearing is the triangle from VCO1. You see? Blue is the original triangle, and green is the output, which in this case, we are just hearing the triangle. There you go. The same thing for the Y input. Let's take our first modulator signal, which is the square wave. In this case, it can be anything. I'm just choosing these waves. Usually sine waves, triangles, low harmonic content waveform work better with ring modulators, but you can plug in anything you want and experiment and come up with original sounds. So the square wave, we send it to Y input, which is the modulator 1 input, and a copy of it, so we can look at it, we send it to the oscilloscope. So now nothing, you cannot hear anything because everything is 0, right? So the blue triangle is the carrier, the red square is the modulator 1. Again, X mix, it's the X input in the mix triangle. The Y mix is the Y signal, in our case the square wave, in the mix. So now with triangle 0, we will have a green square wave. Right? And you can mix them. That's the whole point of having this normalized mixer, that you can mix these 2 inputs. Okay? Okay. So that you can mix the original signals together with the ring modulator signal. Now that we have a carrier and a signal, a carrier and a modulator signal, let's send these 2 to the ring modulator, finally, right? So, up here, X, Y, and Z, they are your X, Y, Z input signal level sent to the ring modulator. So we're gonna send some of the X input, and you don't hear anything yet because channel 1, which is the ring modulator level, is at 0. So now let's send the output of the ring modulator to the output of the module, which is going to be our green shape here. Let's send more of the carrier. And now we can add the first modulator signal. I'm not going to go into ring modulation, but you can see how there is sum and subtraction of the carrier and modulator, and the green waveform is the result of the ring modulation between the blue triangle and the square modulator. Okay, now let's mix some of the original signals together with the ring modulated signal. So we add the original triangle, and then I will add the original square wave. Now, we haven't put anything into the second modulator input yet, right? Now, the second modulator input, the zeta input, it functions similarly to the Y input, but it's more resonant in character, and it can work at audio rate, LFO frequencies. Indeed, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get an output from the Batumi LFO and send it to Z. Okay, and a copy of the LFO is this yellow sign you see now, because it's set to a sign. Okay, now I'm going to send the carrier signal into the ring modulator, and I'm going to increase the volume of the ring modulator in the mix. I'm going to play something, yeah. And instead of using the Y modulator, I'm going to use the Z now, which is this sign. I'm going to add it to modify it a little bit. And I'm going to add the Ys to show that you can use them together. So you have two modulators modulating the original triangle. Now you have a square waveform and a sine wave modulating the triangle. I'm going to change the LFO a little bit. Now I change the LFO to a saw. And we could add some of the original signals. And now I'm going to change the LFO to a square wave. To increase the pitch by 1 octave of the carrier signal, and add sub 1, and sub 2, more thing to add here is that the inputs to the ring modulator are AC coupled. So in other words, fixed control voltage is not going to have any useful effect. We have not finished yet. Remember, we have 5 mixing channels inside this monster module. We have 1, 2, 3, then we have these 2, 4 and 5. Now, sub 1 and sub 2. So whatever you send at the X input, this generates a sub wave 1 octave below X. And the sub 2 generates a signal that is a sub signal that is 2 octaves below the X input signal. Well, I'll let you hear them first, and then I'll show you why there is something quite special going on with these 2. Okay, this is the original signal. This is the X input we send into the mix. Okay. Now I'm going to add the sub 1. Let's open this. Although fat enough, we can go fatter because we have a sub 2. And this is frequency fully open. Let's close it a little bit. And of course, we're only using 3 channels now, right? We are using the original X input, the triangle, and then we're using sub 1 octave below and sub 2 octaves below. But we still can add channel number 3, which is the square before ring modulation. So you have the triangle with 2 sub waves generated based on the frequency of the X input. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be the ring modulator level of the X input, X and Y. Have a lot of shipping potential. We can even just by changing the modulator pitch. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to only increase the level of sub 1. And you will see that the green signal here, which is the output, it's only going to show you whatever the sub 1 is going to give us. Now this is not dependent on ring modulation. This is just a signal created by the module 1 octave below the frequency of the X input. See, if I go 1 octave lower, higher, this is 32, so that is 1 octave below 32. Okay, what I wanted to show you is that there is something really clever going on with these sub bus waves. As you see, a low frequency, it's not an approximation of a perfect, almost perfect square, but it's more of a trapezoid, slightly curved waveform. And I'll tell you why in a moment. And then if we go on higher frequencies, you see how it's going to change more into a sine. times it looks more and more like a sine wave. It's going out of pitch with the sequences. So, what is the benefit of this? The advantage of having a not square waveform as a sub bass, but instead we have this trapezoid with curves on the edges, is that it's less rich harmonically than a full square wave. So you have a sub bass sound that fits quite well with whatever else you may have going on in the lower frequencies with your patch, with your song. At the same, as it goes higher in the higher pitch, as you have seen, it changes into something that is more similar to a sine wave, which is even, of course, obviously less rich in harmonic content per sine. So it is going to fit better with the higher frequencies. I think it works up to 1 kilohertz anyway, with the higher frequency content, mid-high frequency content in your track. So you have sub waveforms that you are able to mix a little bit easier with the rest of the sounds, your kick drum and the bass sound, whatever you have going on in your track. So that is really cool. And it's also good because, again, it's quite different from other sub wave generators. Okay, you may think we've finished, but there is more. One more thing I want to show you about this little monster here, and that is this switch down here. Now, there is one more thing that this little monster can do for you on top of what we've already seen. I'm talking about the frequency double switch. Okay, here I have just the triangle signal going into the X input, which is the carrier input, of course, and a copy of it goes to the oscilloscope, and then we can see the triangle signal being, is playing a few different notes. Final output of the Ring SM is this green cable that gives us the green signal, which is flat now because everything is at 0. So if I mix into the output the original triangle, that's what we have at the output, the original triangle. Okay. Now, what this switch does, if we flick it down, it connects the X and Y input. In other words, allows you to use the ring modulator for a very specific result without having a modulator present, a modulator signal present at the Y input. Let's clarify this first. If I send the carrier signal into the ring modulator, X input, and if I send the output of the ring modulator to the output, you can barely hear a faint presence of the signal, but there is not much coming out of it because, of course, we are not adding any modulating signal. And even if we push this up, there is nothing here, so there is nothing you can do, right? If I flick this down, this will connect the X and Y. So we have this one signal going both to the carrier and the modulator. This is why we can use, with the switch down, the ring modulator without the second signal, because with the switch down, we have this signal going to both carrier and modulator, and that's what happens. Magic, right? One signal, we have a ring of modulation, which normally needs 2 signals. Now, this is a specific results we are having. What I mean is that, again, I don't really want to go into how ring modulators work, but a quadrant multiplier, which is what we have here, it produces the sum and difference of 2 signals, carrier and the modulator. Now, if we use just one signal for both carrier and modulator, it means that the sum of itself, it's a double of itself. If this is 100 Hertz, and we add 100 Hertz, we get 200 Hertz, which is double frequency. That's why it's called a frequency double switch. Double frequency means the signal at the output of the ring modulator is a signal that is 1 octave higher of the original signal, right? Because it's double frequency. The difference would be the signal minus itself. 100 Hertz minus 100 Hertz is 0. So all you have In this case, out of a quadrant multiplier, if you only have, the one signal going to both, all you have is a signal that is 1 octave higher than the original. Indeed, this is the original signal. And now I can generate 1 octave higher signal. And if I can pitch this up, original plus 1 octave up. This means you can have the original signal 1 octave higher, 1 octave lower than the original signal, 2 octaves lower. So you got 4 octaves out of one signal. Triangle, carrier, square, modulator. Snare, triangle, triangle. Okay, I'll go a few things into the Ring SM. I have 2 waves from VCO2 going into the ring modulator. I have a square going into input 5, so we can add some drive, because input 5 is hotter. And I have another square going into input 3, so I'm using 1, 2, 3, and 5. And the ladder filter is not fully open. I like this sound, guys. I'm going to push 5 a little bit so it gets hotter and hotter. We'll add some distortion. So in conclusion, what do we think about the Ring SM? Well, it's an easy one. I love it. I mean, it's special in its individual parts, and it's even more special when you put all of what it offers together. It has a 5-channel mixer. It's not a small mixer. It's 5 channels, they go into distortion, and channel 5 gives you even a little bit more of that distortion, CP3, circuitry-based distortion. You can input just one wave here, and then you can generate the 1 octave higher than this, and you can add 1 octave lower and 2 octave lower, so you can have 4 octaves out of one signal. The sub sounds nice, it's clever design, it's no super rich in harmonics, so it does fit well with other sounds you may have going on. The ring modulator is a little bit special in itself because it has one carrier and 2 modulators, so you can use those 2 modulators together against the carrier, or you can, alternate between them manually. And that is the actual, I like this module so much that I feel like it would have been fantastic if it had CV control of some of these parameters, because you could create nicely evolving morphing sounds. And indeed, I hope that I would suggest to AJH Synth, and I hope they would consider making an expansion for the Ring SM where you get CV control for most or all of its functions, because yes, it would be nice to have CV control not only over the mixing, but over the ring modulator level, over the modulators, the carrier level, the X and Y, and the subs, because it does so much, it does it well, and it sounds good, that CV control would, I think, a module like that would be interesting. Hopefully they will consider doing it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do one myself if I get this, and that's the thing, is I cannot get this stuff right now, I don't have the budget for it, but I'm definitely going to add, as soon as I can, AJH Synth modules to my system, because first of all, they sound like the VCO, the filters, and all, they sound different from everything else that I have, but they are well built, they feel good in using them, they're all solid, really nice quality, and the ones that make sound good, the ones that filter sound good, the ones that modify CV like LFO and etc. They do it in a very useful and meaningful way. So yes, it's a nice series of modules. So what's the end of it? Well, if you are about to add something like a mixer or a ring modulator or sub-bass generator, if you're after those kind of things, then yeah, have a look at this, because this could be the answer to all of your problems now. Definitely compare it with the other options, because, of course, budget, number of features, dimensions, this is a lot of stuff that matters when you choose a module. But definitely don't forget to consider this as well, because this may be the answer you're looking for. I personally love it. Guys, I hope that this review has given you enough information. As usual, I like you guys to form your own opinion. I told you my opinion. And please, if you found this video useful, like it under the video, click on like, share it, and subscribe, because there will be more videos from this system and other non-AJH Synth modules. I will be uploading them soon. So yes, help me out with likes, shares, subscribing. Don't miss out on my next videos, and have fun. Happy Euroracking.